All right, well, it is 4 o'clock and we are officially live streaming on YouTube. I'm going to start sharing my screen so we can go ahead. If you don't know me, my name's Hania. I'm actually the president of BAMSA. And yeah, we're so excited to have you guys here. Thank you guys so much for supporting us. And we're just like super stoked that you all get to hear from our great panelists. So let me start sharing my screen. All right. Is it good to go? Yes. All right. So I don't know how I can mute myself. Okay, there we go. All right. Well, I'm going to pass it to Erin Satterwhite. She's going to introduce herself and she's going to begin our panel. Thank you guys. Oh, and feel free to drop any comments or questions you have in the chat throughout the panel.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Like Hania said, thank you so much for coming and joining us today. And thank you to the Blaffer staff and all of our BAMSA members for helping us organize this event and making it happen, even in the midst of being a full year into the pandemic. We're so thrilled to be able to bring everyone here for such an important topic. So thank you to all of the audience members as well. My name is Erin Satterwhite. I'm an art history major and I'm also studying French. I joined BAMSA just this year, or this semester actually, as an officer. I'm the student and community outreach officer. And I've had relatively little experience with BAMSA, but what I do know about it is that I have been met with enthusiasm, support, and genuine interest in like my passions and who I am. I've gotten to know the officers and members really well over the past month and a half of this semester, and it's been amazing. I've talked to other members about why they love BAMSA, and everyone has said the same thing as me. It extends beyond a forum to just discuss the arts, especially during these chaotic and unprecedented times in which we miss out on so much important in-person connection and communication. BAMSA has been a really supportive community to the students and the artists that it works with. So for those of you who don't know, BAMSA is a really tight-knit organization that is associated with the Blaffer Art Museum on the UH main campus. We work with the Blaffer on kind of helping connect the museum to students on campus. And BAMSA is comprised of many different majors. I am an art history major, but there's also studio art majors, and Hania, our president, is a business major. And it's just really great to have all of these people come together from different majors to talk about our shared interest in the arts and how they're connected to society at large and human connection. And so that's really our goal, is to spread appreciation for the arts among U of H's community and to foster our diverse yet really cohesive group of students. So going from there, as I mentioned, one of our biggest goals is to foster an understanding of the arts role in society and how they can be used to enact change. Here's just kind of, before we start talking about this panel specifically and our ideas for it, I wanted to show these 3 iconic art pieces that kind of deal with arts and activism, since that's our topic. The one in the middle, especially, I know Keith Haring's art is really well known in our pop culture. So yeah, one of our biggest goals is to foster an understanding of the arts role in society and how they can be used to enact change and bring voices to social issues through movements, through a unique, impactful medium. Sometimes the most effective form of communication is not through verbal language, but instead using your voice through the arts. And so in the light of the past tumultuous year, we wanted to shed light on the social justice and activism that really bloomed in 2020. I mean, everyone here I know has seen ordinary people fight for justice in so many brave and often really creative ways. So one of our wonderful members, Jack Murillo, came up with this theme of arts and activism during one of our kind of brainstorming discussions. And we wanted to feature artists and art professionals who are similarly passionate about the link between arts and activism. And so with that being said, we're so grateful to Jack for coming up with this idea, as well as all of the amazing panelists whose work inspires and helps create a more inclusive and understanding society. So I would like to introduce Jaelynn Walls. She is our moderator today, and she is a curator and author, specifically a culture writer based in Texas. She is the 2019 through 2021 Andrew W. Mellon's Curatorial Fellow at the Museum of Fine Arts, Houston. She is also the creator of this amazing educational art history YouTube channel called Art in Color. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Jaelynn.
Hi, so nice to talk to all of you, and I'm so excited to be a moderator of this panel. In terms of my relationship to BAMSA, I was the vice president last year. Is that true? Oh my God, yes, I was the vice president last year, and wow, that feels so long ago, and curated 2 of the BAMSA biannual art shows, which used to be in person. And, you know, even though I came to UH as a junior and a transfer, I was very quickly embraced by the community. And, you know, as Erin said, it's a really wonderful group of people who are so encouraging and really wonderful in terms of their participation and love for the arts. Yes, so beyond that, my relationship to arts and activism is definitely connected to creating creative spaces that give access to typically people of color to different art experiences. So for example, in my curatorial fellow position at the Museum of Fine Arts, Houston, I have put together 2 different shows, one of which is in the Kinder currently, titled The Remaking of Myths and Tales. You can still go see it. It's going to be up for, I think, until the summer, maybe after. And it looks at different contemporary and modern artists' reinterpretation of classic mythology, as well as just general storytelling through, you know, a more personal lens. And I try to include as many artists of color as possible, which of course is difficult to do when you're working with a pre-existing collection, but there's some really interesting works there, including works by a local artist, Trenton Doyle Hancock, as well as the artist Allison Sarr, things like that. And also my YouTube channel also deals with accessibility. I started it as a sophomore in college while working at the Blanton Museum in Austin, just trying to highlight different artists of color in their contemporary art collection. And there was like a lot of bureaucracy, so I was only able to make 2 videos while I was in that position, because, you know, the font had to be right and the music had to be blah, blah, blah. But, you know, after leaving that position, I realized what a positive response I got from people who couldn't have access to the museum or hadn't heard about some of the artists I was discussing in my videos in their art history classes, either in high school or in college. So I just continued to make videos, and I really enjoy like having these digital relationships and discussions with people all over the world, and it's proven to be really vital to my sense of not purpose, but my sense of creating accessible spaces, especially in this current time. So enough about me. Let me introduce the first member of the panel, Francesca Fuchs. And let me just give you a lot of information about her. Born in London and raised in Munster, Francesca Fuchs moved to the US in 1996 for the core residency program at the Museum of Fine Arts Houston. She makes paintings that consider closely the overlooked intimacies that shape our lives, giving careful consideration and attention to family relationships, objects of the everyday, quiet moments, and what art offers when it enters our personal spaces. This subtle gesture of careful connection underscores her rigorous investigation into the significance and tradition of paintings. Fuchs' work was featured in venues including the Whitechapel Art Gallery, London, the Modern Art Museum of Fort Worth, the Suburban Illinois, and in a solo exhibition at the Contemporary Art Museum, Houston. She was the 2017 Josephine Mercy Heathcote Fellow at McDowell and Art League, Houston's 2018 Texas Artist of the Year. Fuchs lives in Houston, Texas.
Apologies. Thank you so much, Jaelynn, for the introduction. And thank you for inviting me to this panel. I was, at first I was like, I don't think of myself as maybe being the typical person you would associate with art and activism. But then as I was thinking about the invitation, I was like, well, a big part of the work that I make is very much around the small, unseen, what it is to work in the home, what it is to be a mom, a woman. So there's this very strong feminist stance, maybe in my work, as kind of the way that I think of art and activism. To kind of start off my whole conversation, I wanted to quote a good friend and colleague of mine, Laura August, who's a curator and writer. And this is like something that she wrote. She was like, to think of my practice, all gesture of hope and resistance, of quiet world imagining, of resistance in community, of collaborative listening, of acknowledgement of grief and the space it needs. And so I guess I want to think about art in this context here of art and activism as a quiet world imagining, that I think that any of us who are in the creative endeavor, we are by quietly imagining other worlds, by contributing, we see, we're looking at how things are seen and how we could change perception about looking at things. Yeah, I don't know what else I might say in my little introduction. I guess I came to Houston, as Jaelynn was saying, from Europe. I've now been here for 20 years. I'm an educator. Also, I teach at the Glassell School of Art. And so, yeah, I feel like just being part of the community in those many different ways is also part of just being a communal way of making work. Yeah, I'm gonna hand it back to Jaelynn here.
Thank you so much for all of the insight on your art. I would love to move forward to discuss our next panelist, Quang Vu. Quang Vu is a graduate of the University of Houston, with a BFA in painting and a triple minor in art history, business administration, and sales. That is serious. As the manager of external affairs, he's charged with fundraising activities and external relations management for Houston Arts Alliance. Previous to Houston Arts Alliance, Quang has worked with local arts organizations such as Diverse Works and Fresh Arts, and was the academic nonprofit advisor for Sales for Social Impact at the University of Houston's Bauer College of Business. His favorite things to do in the world are to spend time with his cats, getting in quality time with friends and family, and hiking outdoors. Please give a warm welcome to Quang.
Jaelynn, you are too kind. That was such a generous introduction. And, spending time with your cat is a form of activism. I just want to put that out there. Just kidding. I am really happy to be on here. It's such a full circle moment because not too long ago, I would say 2.5 or maybe 3 years ago, I was the co-president of BAMSA with Alexis Pai, who is also on this panel. And it was such a joy. So being able to come back and talk about, what art and activism means to me is a privilege. I am both an artist and arts administrator. So I started in, creating my own works. I had my own art practice. And then kind of through my various internships and institutions that I worked with, I very quickly came to realize that my passion was to try to make a more inclusive space for artists to thrive in Houston. Having worked as an artist and understanding kind of what it was like being in the academic space, and then leaving the academic space and seeing how there wasn't much of an opportunity for students to find their art practice in a way where they could sustain themselves. So that's how I ended up at HAA. And there are two little, I would say, mini murals behind me. Those are some of the drawings I've done just to liven up my office space. So I'm currently at work right now. I'm the only one in our office. We're still operating at a low capacity, but yeah, that's just a little bit about me. I will hit a pause button so that we can continue introducing the rest of the panelists.
Thank you so much for introducing yourself and also showing your wonderful murals. They're really fabulous. The next panelist, or next last best, save the best for last, is Alexis Pai. Alexis Pai is a painter that currently resides in Houston, Texas, and is also a graduate of the University of Houston's undergraduate painting program. She uses the tradition of portraiture to unveil complex truths about the relationship between art history and race, exploring portraiture as a way to express the Black body outside of its social constructs. Alexis was born in Michigan and as a child dealt with alienation while she attended predominantly white schools. In her youth, her budding love for art grew deeper when her mother asked her a very simple question: why don't you draw Black people? This question changed her trajectory as an artist and threw her into a lifelong mission to answer that question. Even when people of color have so much impact on culture, a little girl cannot see themselves in her media. Alexis uses family members, friends, and strangers as subject matter in portraits dealing with race. She also uses references from print and modern media to depict different identities in the diaspora. Alexis was selected as a 2018 Summer Studios and for a Round 51 Local Impact 2 for Project Row Houses in 2019. She was also part of a group show of young artists at the David Shelton Gallery for Everything's Gonna Be All Right, curated by Robert Hodge. And she was also a part of the TSU Museum Citywide Exhibition curated by the Museum of Fine Arts Houston's Assistant Curator of Modern Art, Kenitra Fletcher, who I am personally in love with. In this exhibition, she won the Curator's Choice Certificate. She was also part of the group show Animal Crossing and This is America Art USA Today in the Kunsthal, KADE in the Netherlands. I am so excited to introduce her and hear more about her. Please give her a warm welcome.
Hello, everybody. I guess I'm very honored. I agree with Quang. This is a total full circle moment because I remember where I used to be right there with BAMSA, I guess as the president, but also I really tried to use that position as to put people in BAMSA that could really make it grow, I guess, and also just bring different perspectives. I love that it's not just art majors, it's business students and everything in between. But yeah, I guess my artwork is more so the fantasy of of portraiture and looking at the Black body not as this its struggle, but as something that can have joy and live outside of its constructs that has been created for it. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here, and I will give it back to Jaelynn.
Thank you so much. So we have a couple of questions that have been prepared to ask all of the panelists. However, we are also accepting questions in the chat. So if you're attending, please feel free to put some questions in there and we will review them and, you know, bring them up. So the first question for the panel, and you can all, you know, just chime in however you feel appropriate. How has your individual art practice changed since you first began to work? Either medium or, you know, understanding its impact, anything like that.
Do you want to, I mean, do you want to call on us or we just kind of bump in with thoughts?
Just jump right on in, please.
Right. I mean, I'm definitely the oldest here on this panel and have been making art for a long time. And certainly my art practice has changed a lot. And I also feel like the whole art environment has changed so much since I started making work. And maybe also, you know, I started in Europe and then the US, but I think that, you know, I went to art school in the 1990s when most of you weren't even born yet. But the kind of, the emphasis at that point, I think was very individualistic, like you, the art, you know, here, you, the artist, as if you could make art without, right? Like the feeling was that you were going to invent the whole new world. And certainly, I feel like we're in a more collective moment. I love that there are so many collaborations happening. And I think just the whole understanding of artists as, well, I feel like I'm just like, you're a part of this whole fabric of art that's been made over millennia, and also of types of art that are being made that aren't just being made by artists, but you know, this kind of whole endeavor of creative thought and making, and that you're just this sort of one part of it that's creating, you know, as part of this bigger kind of body. So I guess that's how I want to think about it, and in terms of how much it's shifted over my time of making work.
I will go ahead and jump in there right after Francesca. I would say my individual art practice has changed more times than I can actually count, primarily because I came here as an immigrant. And so the first thing I learned or was really comfortable with before I even got a sense of how to read and write in English was drawing. I was able to kind of communicate what I was feeling and explore early parts of my identity through my own artwork. So that was kind of a space where art has always existed in my life. And I think my art practice has evolved in allowing me to explore my queer identity, my Vietnamese cultural identity, and what art means to me and how it exists in relation to how I understand things and express myself. As I think for a lot of other folks as well on this call. And it's changed and evolved as I've gotten older, because I think, you know, the way we talk about how the arts exist is relative to what we study and the information that we have available and what our beliefs are in relation to art as a concept, as a definition. Same thing for activism. Like, I think activism is also a very personal thing. And when these two concepts have a conversation together, you kind of develop like what art and activism looks like for you and how that changes again and again and again. And I think where my art practice has taken me right now is that I've kind of understood it as, you know, the passion that I'm now bringing into my role as an arts administrator. I still create work, but more so in how I'm showing up at HAA and the work that I do here, and understanding that we are an institution that serves artists and serves the entire community of creators. And that's who I was not too long ago. So how am I still holding true to myself and who I was when I first realized I'm an artist, I am a creator, and now I am somebody who's an arts administrator in a role that is supposed to support artists and creators. And that doesn't necessarily mean like I'm creating any physical work, but it's still the same emotions and the same passion that I dip into when I created work that I now do at work. That's a really roundabout answer, but that's kind of how I approach my art practice now as a 24-year-old queer man working as an arts administrator.
I guess like my practice has like changed like with the, I don't know, like I guess like what I was going through as a person that was living in Detroit, like, and then like coming to the South and dealing with that. I remember like when I was a kid, I used to pick on my face a lot, and I like would get like horrible scars from it. So the one thing my mom like was like, just draw, and she kind of just like threw it at me, like, oh, like, like, but it was one of the most magical moments of my life, because like, I guess without that moment, I wouldn't be here. So I guess like from there, and then like growing up and going into like being in middle school and being like, okay, so I went from inner city schools and then into the suburban schools. So I was kind of like in this really weird in between with kids. Like I didn't talk like the city kids, but then I didn't look like the kids that lived in the suburbs. So that the drawing aspect helped me socialize with people, knowing how to draw cartoons and, people giving me their lunch money to draw this like one character from a manga, like kind of like really made these relationships for me. So going into high school and like trying to figure out like, okay, like I like looking at art now, and I like Kehinde Wiley, and I like Cause, I like Pharrell, and like I'm really in love with hip hop, and like how those things reflected into my drawing. And like I thought I was going to be a shoe designer, or I thought I was going to be a car designer, and I was brushing my drawing skills to go to like a really nice design school. And then when I applied and I got accepted, and they only gave me $3,000 for a $30,000 a year school, I was like, I can't do anything with it. So I was like, I guess I'll be a painter. And I guess like that's how it changed. Like it changed with my life and like how like my interest and what I needed. And now I find myself like I draw to try to like understand like me in my relationship to like my culture as like a Black woman, as a person who's always looked up to men for some odd reason other than women, and like dealing with that. So just it helps me kind of understand myself and just my community, because without drawing, I would have never been able to be social. And to be social is to kind of be active and be an activist. So yeah.
Thank you all so much for answering this question so, in depth and with such grace, I'll say. For the next question that we have prepared, also please, again, feel free to ask your questions in the chat. What is the role of art in our current environment? Our current environment meaning this space in which we have meetings online and we have panels where we discuss our activism from our bedrooms. Yes, what is your idea of art right now? No pressure.
I guess I'll go first, but I don't know. I think I have a very I don't know. I don't think art can change the world, but I think it can like get that one person to think a little longer about something. And that's all you really need, honestly, because that one person will go talk to another person and that person will go talk to another person. And if it becomes popular enough and it's seen more, then like people will be like, oh, okay, like maybe if this art is getting popular, then maybe I should like start paying attention and like rethinking some things. I don't think exactly that it changes the world, you know. I think you need like politicians, you need people that leaders to like kind of change their mind. But it does in this really blue collar way change like the minority, the people who get like, who kind of get like left out. I think, man, I one of the reasons why I became a prep at the MFA is because like I never seen a Black woman in like a prep position. Like not even when I was in Detroit, when I would go to the museum all the time. So I think that was because like at first I didn't want to do it because I was scared because I was like, I'm gonna be the only woman. I'm gonna be the only Black person. Well, I'm not the only Black person that I've learned right now, but I'm gonna have to like face all these challenges. And I don't know, it's been one of the most rewarding things I've ever done in my life because like it's basically changed my mind about older people, older men, older white men, and like how what their understanding of like social things are and what I sometimes come to the table with, and sometimes I have to change my thought too. So I think in that way, I think if we hold positions in art and we kind of become more transparent of just like, oh, okay, like I really want to see something and I really want to see something different. I think that's how you change it. I think that's how it changes the current environment. I think you need more of that. But I do think like when like if something really like I think art is a very quiet form. I mean, I think painting especially is a very quiet form, but it's a very militant form because it's like how many times have they told us that painting is dead? Yet there's like 5,000 painters out there that's still making it. So, and still making very radical work. So I think it's just like it's a slower way of creating change.
Pai's response was amazing, but I'll try to follow up with it. But I wholeheartedly agree with that, and I think that's right on. The role of art is an opportunity for you to stop running and to kind of take a moment and to imagine. And whatever art form you encounter in that specific moment, in that specific instance, it forces you to imagine a world, a reality, a truth, a value, a principle that you've not considered before in ways that might be through, a literary piece, or, a theater performance or, a visual art piece. But it shows you experiences that you would not otherwise be made exposed to. And I think those experiences enlighten you. And some of them channel a form of empathy. Some of them channel some form of emotion from you. And I think speaking to the current environment, it's a lot of stimulation right now. I don't know about y'all, but like this is probably the 8th Zoom call I've been on. And we live in a Zoom world right now where things are constantly moving and we're being expected to still maintain the pace of which we were moving at, if not even faster. But for me, whenever I am engaging with art, whenever I'm engaging with an art form, it forces me to slow down and kind of take time with a piece or whatever I'm seeing to really understand what is this piece trying to tell me in relation to my current experience right now. And it helps me think. So I think that's a really like watered down layman's explanation that I can give for what I think the role of art is in our current environment. Because a great example that I think off the top of my head is immigration policies, like still a huge hot topic of debate. And I don't know if you guys remember the teeter-totter wall by Ronald Rael and Virginia San. It's the pink teeter-totter that sits on Trump's an incomplete wall, and kids will come from Mexico City, and then kids will come from the south of Texas and play on the wall, and they'll have fun and experience joy. Yes, Michelle, if you can find pictures of it, please drop links in there. But the reason why I think, you know, art has such a strong purpose is examples like that, where it forces us to stop and just examine like an art piece that is so simple without kind of forcing a narrative down your throat and asking you to really understand what this piece means when it intersects with art and activism, and how even after the Trump administration has already invested $15 billion into the wall, it hasn't stopped immigrant families from experiencing joy and happiness. So I think the role of art, to refer to that specific example, kind of challenges systems and imagines new realities. And I think that's a really powerful kind of message for the role of the arts.
Yeah, I thank you, Quang, for that. And Alexis, I'm like, I don't even know how to follow up on. I would totally go with what Quang said, that I think that one of the really important things that art can do at the moment is this kind of slowing down and creating a sense of caring, a sense of community, like true community, like who are the people that you are connecting to in a way that feels deeper than the Zoom screen, right? And you don't even have to see those people, you just have to know that that work is being made or see that work being made. And then I guess I'm talking to makers partly, and right. I mean, there are makers in this group as well as art historians, as well as, you know, from all different areas. But I also think about this in terms of in this current environment. I'm just, you know, for me, it's like, for me, being in the studio is incredibly grounding at the moment, and it's about a sense of touch. And I think also when I'm looking at work, I think we all miss touch and connection at the moment, and a kind of physicality, a materiality. So engaging, like, with your hands with something, or with your eyes with something, and taking that time to kind of care, to ground, I think is extremely important at the moment. And then, I mean, truly, I mean, I know that's kind of the thing to say, but I do think that art really is transformative, right? And so that is its role at the moment, is how can we transform society as it is at the moment. And I believe that this kind of seeing, opening, grounding, and slowing down, and experiencing is and sensitizing ourselves is how we're going to change the world. And we are. We're going to make, you know, it's like change will have to, it will have to, it's happen, it will have to happen. So yeah.
I fully, absolutely agree. I mean, it feels like it's so difficult in this current moment to have any sort of tangible shift in thought or, you know, impact on others. But yeah, I think the teeter-totter was a really good example, and thinking about these smaller moments for individuals. Okay, next question. What inspired you to use art as a platform for your voice? I know Quang and Alexis, you sort of seem to answer these questions a little bit earlier, so, you know, no pressure if you don't want to repeat yourself, but yes, go ahead. You're muted.
So sorry. I do this thing where I will read the question back to myself multiple times because I'm like, let me just make sure I'm understanding the question correctly before I start talking, because I tend to ramble. So I'm like taking my time with it. But since I've just unmuted myself, I guess what inspired you to use art as a platform for your voice? I think it was the incredible personal feeling of feeling disenfranchised as an artist of color and a queer artist of color, and seeing how institutions were still right off the bat doing unpaid internships, while the standard across the board for for-profit institutions is like, you get an internship and you get paid. But you know, when you look to arts and culture in the nonprofit space, you know, funding is a problem, right? So first of all, like, you know, we sit on like this iceberg that exists outside of like society, and somehow like we don't have the same level of support as you would get if you were working in any of the STEM fields. And I think that type of stigma plays into why we feel so deeply as artists that we have to speak up and we have to show up and we have to be present in so many different spaces, because people will not open those doors for us. It's never been a walk in the park to be an artist. I feel like if you are afforded a lot of privileges right off the bat. And that's a different conversation. But I think personally for me, that was kind of the starting point, was realizing after, you know, my fourth internship that this was a standard, and that I had searched to an exhausting degree for opportunities that were paid and they just weren't there. And so the next thought that I had in my head is, I'll just make those opportunities for the community and insert myself into spaces where I have a voice and I have a role. So working at HAA, which is what I believe to be the largest institution in the city that does grant making specifically for artists, I'm inserting my voice into how we shape grants and how we support the community. And I'm still listening to my friends and my peers in the art space to make sure that, you know, I don't forget that feeling where I was sitting in the studio and it was 2 a.m. and I was on last hire and I'm like, are you kidding me? There has to be a paid internship. Like, I'm refreshing the classified section, or I'm going to Fresh Arts and trying to find something. And that was when I realized I wanted to do more with my art practice. I wanted to have a role and be a decision maker, because that was something that was deeply important for me.
Yeah, that was great. For me, I guess it's also out of a personal, you know, this kind of personal story, and mainly from the perspective of being a woman. Still kind of the fact that women are completely underrepresented in museums. You know, when you go to art schools, the predominant, you know, I think it's like 70 to 80% women, but then when you look in galleries, it's 70 or 80% men. I mean, the balance has been redressed over the time a little bit, that certainly that I've been making work, but that's sort of my, I guess one of my drivers, and which is also kind of, you know, for me, like I think in 2005, I made this big kind of series of breastfeeding baby paintings where you just sort of see part of the breast in a giant baby head. And then a show that was really kind of around the domestic landscape of the, you know, the home, the mother, kind of wanting to highlight and think about motherhood and issues that just weren't acknowledged, right? It's like how does that work? And on some strange level, I also feel like just by example, maybe I've contributed in town to this kind of sense that, yes, you can be an artist, you can have a real career, and you can have kids. When I have 2 kids who are now literally about to go off to, the second one is about to go to university. But when I had my kids, I didn't know any other artists who had kids, and definitely not 2, right? Like if you were gonna have a kid, you would just have 1. And it's extremely hard, as Quang was saying, it's extremely hard just being an artist, and then you're how do I make a living? How do I make my work? And then you have this kind of other thing that's happening on top of that. Yeah, so I guess. Over to Alexis.
Yeah, I think like what really inspired me, I would guess like seeing people like in my community who had like these softer sides and it would never get revealed in the media. Like you would see like this very surface level depiction of like Black people and like Black people that live in the city, but you never got to see like those softer moments or those fantastical moments, like the fantasy of it, you know. So I think that's what really inspired me. Like I remember that question my mother asked me like almost every day, because it was one of like those aha moments. Like, you know, my mom is a very like matter of fact woman, and she, like, even though like as a teenager I used to like hate that, but I learned that it was because she was freaking awkward. She's a very awkward woman, but people look at it because she's Black that she's mean. But no, she's a very just like, I don't know what to say, so I'm going to say what's on top of my head. And hopefully you can like understand what I'm trying to say to you. And I think that right there, just like knowing that how misunderstood she was, and also like these complexities of just like with Black men, like both of my fathers, like my stepfather is a very like caring individual, but that never gets depicted in like films or like, well, I guess today we see more of it, but especially when I was growing up, like the Black man was like, you know, he was the person who in the household was like the like, you know, like you must listen, you know, or you would get a whooping, or like, you know, like he's the head of the household. Where in my family, like my mother was the head of the household. Like everything went like, you know, she was unhappy, everybody was unhappy. So those like see like, you know, like not seeing those things related in film or commercials or even in like music was very strange to me. So I think that's like what inspired me, and just like painting in a way where it's like, oh, okay, we can be so much more. And we also can be these things that you've never seen before. We can be different colors. We can be polka dotted. We can be covered in flowers, you know. We can be all these things because like it's painting. I can do whatever I want. And I think that right there is like saying like I have that control. Like since I never really felt in control, because I don't do well speaking in public sometimes, even though people have told me like, oh, you did good. And I'm just like, I feel horrible after it. Or it's the one thing I know I can do. You know, it's the one thing I know like everything's gonna be okay in a way.
Thank you all so much for sharing your sort of origin moments in connection to art as a space where you can express yourself. I don't, there's not another, oh, okay. In your opinion, how can students make an impact, either through their art or just in general? This can be, you know, a more specific answer. For example, Quang, you could talk about maybe different organizations in Houston, or maybe just something more vague, like be yourself.
Would I be in trouble if my answer sounded like something I got from a self-help book that you picked up at a half-price bookstore?
Do what you need to do. Say what you need to say.
I love it. This is such a great space to be in. But I want to empower everyone who is looking at this question to take it home as a homework assignment for yourself, because you're all students. Homework is still a thing. And ask yourself this question, because I think impact starts from a deeply personal place. I can share, things in terms of processes and, tips and resources and everything, but it's not really going to be activated until you answer this question for yourself, until you truly understand, why am I here? Why am I having this conversation? Why do I show up to work? Why do I show up to my studio? Why do I get in the car and drive to my 9 to 5? Like, if it's for, if you're looking to make an impact, I think it really starts from the head and heart work that you're going to do, and then understanding how you want to build a plan for that. And so I will try to be quick. If you guys are artists or creators, I'm going to throw out some really quick resources for you. So if you have a pen and pencil nearby or a phone, because we're in the 21st century, feel free to jot them down. But if Fresh Arts, for example, great space for artists, register for their monthly artist resource newsletter, Glassfire, their classified section, HAA's newsletter. If you don't know of Mid-America Arts Alliance, I would highly recommend registering for their newsletter. They also make grants out to artists and creators. United States Artists, I think, is one of the largest institutions right now that are making grants out to artists. And I think their largest grant size to artists is $50,000. I might be getting that wrong, so someone please check me on that. And so those are kind of a few places that you, as an artist and a creator that's still in school, can have access to, can start exploring, can dip into, and get those resources for yourself. Because I didn't know about these things. Like, I had to go out there, do my own research. And the great thing about newsletters is that those newsletters is a email that a team of like 3, 4, or 8 built for you, like specifically for your needs. Like, so somebody else is already doing that work, getting that information, finding those job opportunities and putting them in a singular space. All you have to do is register to find this information for yourself. And I think the best resource of all, and this is the self-help, like half-price bookstore advice, is your community, your peers, your friends. Go out there, collaborate, start a collective, like, make beautiful things, start an art group, curate online like Jaelynn is already doing, and understand that you have a power, and that when you understand other people who have power and want to get to the same place as you, how can you grow your power together? So that's my little tidbit of advice, and I'll throw it off to Alexis or Francesca to take it off from there.
I'm going to say, yeah, look at Quang, look at Alexis, look at Jaelynn, right? I mean, that's what they have done. I would follow on from that. Create your own opportunities. If things don't happen for you, make them happen. Make the thing happen that you are interested in specifically. So I would the list of things that Quang was listing, I would add on to those that I think you should get on the mailing lists for our museum and nonprofit spaces, like Project Row Houses, the Art League Houston, Lawndale Diverse Works. At the moment, there are so many kind of events happening remotely. It's almost, right? Yeah, it's almost over. But those are also the waters, figure out which things you're interested in. And those are going to be the place where you can find your community. If you're a ceramicist, there's a whole ceramics community, right? I mean, there are like all these different ways that we can find our people. But the main thing is, don't wait for something to happen to you. I mean, especially if you're like an artist, a studio artist, there was always this kind of feeling like, oh, somebody's going to find me, I will be discovered. That's just not going to happen. You have to make your opportunities. And I think that applies to any field, anything, whether you're in business and you have to kind of make the things happen that you want to see in the world. And by doing that, you'll make an impact, you know. Yeah, it'll change the world.
I agree wholeheartedly with Quang and Francesca. I think those resources that they just dropped are like just awesome places that you should start with. I guess since they named just about everything that I would have probably named or even more, I would just say like just know your worth. You know your worth. Don't try, like, I know I struggled with that a lot. I struggled with like, okay, I'm gonna work these very minuscule jobs that I'm gonna do all, like I'm gonna try to say yes all the freaking time. And sometimes you can't say yes to everything. So I guess that's the thing that I will leave you with. It's just you only can be as strong as you let yourself be. So if you spread yourself too thin, then you won't be able to help somebody else. So that, I mean, and that's the impact. So make sure you're taking care of yourself. Make sure, you know, if you're saying yes a lot, make sure, you know, you invest in a planner. But, you know, these are things that, like, you know, because if you're missing deadlines, and if you're not available to help that person, then you are on a decline of like, okay, like maybe I'm not making that much of an impact, and maybe I feel like look within, you know, why am I doing this? Am I trying to overcompensate for something? Because I know especially I was doing that. So I will leave you with that.
But do say yes.
Of course, say yes. I maybe that came out wrong, but like I would say just, you know, just make sure you can do it. That's all I'm saying. And you can do it well.
Sorry, y'all. One last thing. Quick plug. Everybody should put in a save the date for 20 years from now when Alexis has her retrospective at the Guggenheim, because her stuff is hot. It is. I love your work. So just to set the record, I am on Alexis's fan club and I'm leading it. So yeah, okay, I'll stop myself there.
Okay, so thank you all so much for answering all of these questions. We do have two from the chat. So I think I'll just ask both of them, but only one person answer if that's okay, if you feel qualified and ready to answer. Elijah says, one challenge of including Black art in larger museums is the lack of physical representation. Who or what would be the avenue to create more representation or create ways for larger museums to consider and or purchase work from artists of color? I know this is a little specific, so does anyone here have a little bit of expertise? If not, I can answer.
I think Jaelynn should answer, because, like, you know, you have experience with working with curators, and you know, I know you work closely with them. So yeah, I think that's a definitely you question.
Okay, sure. So this is kind of a yikes answer, but museums are huge bureaucracies and there's a lot of financial gatekeeping. So one of the few ways that you could get your art in a museum is to know someone with a lot of money who wants to buy your art and then donate it to the museum, or know a curator who wants to convince somebody with a lot of money to buy your art and give it to the museum. Or maybe if you just know a really talented artist, you could just keep talking about them to really rich people or curators who know really rich people. I know this is an extremely discouraging answer, but it's literally just how it works. Simultaneously, I would say large museums do not have to be the forefront for your art and do not have to be like the sacred space. You can work with smaller galleries that do not require this really terrible relationship to money. You can put on your own shows. You can use alternative spaces like libraries or community centers. If you have an idea and you have people who support you, which if you have a good idea, usually people are very willing to support you. So yes, and then, so that's my answer. The second question from the chat is, what are some of the best ways to support artists of color, especially during these all virtual times? If I could just get like one answer as we're running out of time.
Buy their work.
We have 30 seconds left if anybody else wants to.
I'm just gonna second Francesca. Like honestly, supporting the arts means like literally support your artist. Like there is a survey that United States Artists circulates so often because it's so true, where they did research into how the public feels around the value of the arts versus the value of the artist. And the value of the arts is like at this incredibly high percentage. It's like 90 something. And then when they look at how people value, okay, so you value the arts, do you want to pay artists? It's like 25%. It's ridiculous. So those numbers are discouraging, but we can fix that, right? Like we can support artists, we can buy artworks, we can, if your friend has a DJ show or they're putting on a little live theater performance or some type of Zoom event, like buy a ticket, get your friends to come, support your friends, support artists, because, you know, one day they're going to make it, and you should feel proud that you were one of the people who supported their journey and supported their craft and got them there.
I absolutely agree. And thank you so much for leaving us with those genius words. I am going to hand it back to Erin.
Yes.
And
yes.
yeah, there we go.
Yeah, just really quickly, because I know it's past our time, but thank you all so much again for participating. Jaelynn, Francesca, Quang, Alexis, thank you so much for sharing your experiences, your insights, and for answering our questions. Thank you again to the Blaffer staff, the BAMSA officers, and all of our members, and everyone else for joining us today. We do kind of want to plug our organization and say that Michelle just shared our link tree, and that has lots more resources for you. We have meetings every Thursday at 6 on Teams, but you'll find the information either on our Instagram, which is at uh.bamsa, or we have the link tree that Michelle just shared in the comments, as well as these really awesome QR codes for all of these resources that we touched on today. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. So much fun.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks. It was cool.